The heavy oak door slammed in my face with a finality that shattered my world forever. At 17, standing alone on the rain-slicked porch with only a backpack and the echo of my father's words, "Get out, you filthy faggot," I realized my life as Leo Thompson had just ended. Rain mixed with the tears streaming down my cheeks as I stumbled down the steps of our small house in rural Ohio, the same porch where Dad used to teach me how to throw a baseball on summer evenings. His face had twisted into something unrecognizable when he found the crumpled note from school, the one where I confessed my feelings to a boy in my class. "No son of mine lives under this roof," he'd roared, shoving me out before I could even grab a coat. Mom stood behind him, silent and pale, her eyes pleading but her mouth shut tight. I didn't beg. Pride or shock? I wasn't sure which kept my voice locked. The streetlights blurred as I walked the 3 miles to the bus station, backpack heavy with clothes and the last $20 from my wallet. Every car that passed felt like judgment. Every shadow a reminder that I had nowhere left to go. By midnight, I was on a Greyhound heading east, the engine humming like a heartbeat I no longer recognized as my own. New York City was just a name then, a place I'd seen in movies where people like me supposedly found safety. But safety felt like a lie when the bus dropped me off at Port Authority the next morning, the air thick with exhaust and strangers who didn't look twice at a soaked teenager. I wandered for hours, stomach growling, until I spotted a sign for a youth shelter downtown. The lines stretched around the block, faces hardened by nights I couldn't imagine yet. When my turn came, the volunteer, a woman with kind eyes and a clipboard, asked my age and story. 17, kicked out, I muttered, and she nodded like she'd heard it 1,000 times. They gave me a cot and a meal ticket, but sleep wouldn't come. I lay there replaying Dad's voice, wondering if Nathaniel from school ever thought about me after I stopped answering texts. The next days blurred into survival mode. I landed a job washing dishes at a diner near Times Square, the pay barely covering subway fare and the cheap hostel when the shelter filled. Nights were the worst, the city noise pressing in while I questioned everything. Was I broken like Dad said? The mirror in the bathroom showed a scared kid with dark circles and a jaw still bruised from that last push. One evening after shift, I sat on a bench in Central Park, the autumn leaves crunching underfoot, and pulled out the only photo I had left, a faded snapshot of me and Dad at my 10th birthday. Tears came again, hot and angry. I didn't know then that the boy I'd loved in secret would become the man who'd save me, or that the father who'd thrown me away would one day stand in a crowd begging for what he'd lost. But right then, the only thing keeping me going was the stubborn belief that I had to keep walking, 1 block at a time, until the pain turned into something I could carry without breaking. The shelter volunteer noticed me the next week and slipped me extra meal vouchers. "You're not the first, Leo, and you won't be the last," she said softly. Her words stuck with me through the cold nights and the long shifts, a tiny spark in the darkness that said maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of my story. I kept showing up at the shelter every evening after the diner closed, the routine becoming my only anchor in a city that never slept. The bruises faded, but the ache in my chest stayed, sharp every time I remembered Dad's face or Mom's silence. One rainy Thursday, the volunteer introduced me to a guy named Nathaniel, 24, tall with warm brown eyes and an easy smile that didn't match the exhaustion in his shoulders. He volunteered there twice a week, teaching art to the kids who drifted in. "Heard you're new to the streets," he said, handing me a sketch pad and pencil. "Draw what you feel. It helps." I laughed at first, but that night I sketched the porch door slamming shut, lines jagged and dark. Nathaniel saw it the next day and didn't judge. "That's real pain," he said quietly. "You're stronger than you think." We started talking over cheap coffee after his shifts. He told me he grew up in Brooklyn, came out at 19, lost a scholarship because his family couldn't handle it. Now he worked as a freelance illustrator by day and gave back at the shelter. His stories made my own feel less isolating, like there was a path forward even if the road was cracked. Weeks turned into months. I saved enough for a tiny room in a shared apartment in Queens, the walls thin but the roof solid. Nathaniel helped me move my few things, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs without complaint. "You've got talent with words too," he said one evening as I showed him a short story I'd written on napkins during breaks. "Keep going. College applications open soon." Community college became my next goal. I studied at night, the books borrowed from the library, while the city lights flickered outside my window. Prejudice hit hard sometimes, like the coworker who sneered when he overheard me mention Nathaniel, or the landlord who raised rent the day he learned I was gay. Those nights Nathaniel would text me simple things, "You're not alone in this," and I'd feel the weight lift just enough to keep breathing. One weekend he took me to a quiet spot by the East River, the skyline glowing across the water. We sat on the grass, no pressure, just talking about dreams and fears. "I used to hate myself for who I am," he admitted. "Now I see it as the best part of me." His honesty cracked something open in me. For the first time since Ohio, I didn't feel like a mistake. Christmas came cold and lonely, no call from home. Nathaniel invited me to his small apartment for dinner with a few friends from the shelter, people who'd become like family. We laughed over turkey sandwiches and shared stories, the warmth filling gaps I didn't know existed. But doubt crept in too. Was I dragging him down? He had his own life, his own art shows coming up. When I voiced it, he looked at me steady. "Helping you isn't a burden, Leo. It's what friends do." Friends. The word hung there, warm and safe, but I wondered if it could grow into something more. The new year brought acceptance letters, community college starting in spring. Nathaniel celebrated with me over pizza, his hand briefly on mine across the table, a touch that sent sparks I wasn't ready to name. Life was still hard, bills tight, memories sharp, but with him beside me the future didn't feel impossible anymore. I started believing I could build something real, even if the scars from home never fully healed. College classes filled my days with literature and writing workshops, the professors pushing me to turn pain into pages. Nathaniel was there every step, proofreading my essays late into the night, his encouragement steady as the Brooklyn Bridge lights we watched from his window. Our friendship deepened into something neither of us rushed to label. One spring evening after a long critique session, we walked along the promenade, the river breeze cool on our faces. "You've changed me," I told him, voice low. He stopped, eyes meeting mine. "You've changed yourself, Leo. I'm just walking beside you." That was the night everything shifted without words. A quiet understanding that this was more than friendship. We didn't need grand gestures. It was the way he remembered my coffee order, the way I made him laugh after a tough client meeting. Summer brought my first paid writing gig, a local magazine piece on youth homelessness. Nathaniel framed the printed copy and hung it in his studio. But shadows lingered. A letter arrived from Mom, short and careful, saying Dad was still angry but she missed me. I read it aloud to Nathaniel, tears blurring the ink. "Do I answer?" I asked. He held my hand. "Only if it feels right for you." The choice weighed heavy, stirring old guilt and fresh anger. Society threw curveballs too, whispers at school when I brought Nathaniel to a campus event, stares from strangers who assumed we didn't belong. One night after a heated argument with a classmate who called us unnatural, I broke down in Nathaniel's arms. "What if they're right?" He pulled back just enough to look at me. "They're not. We're building something honest. That's stronger than any hate." His words became my armor. We traveled a little that summer, short trips to the Jersey Shore where the ocean washed away some of the noise. I turned 18 quietly, no party, just Nathaniel cooking pasta and reminding me how far I'd come. The relationship felt natural, built on trust and shared growth, nothing flashy. Friends at the shelter noticed the change in me, the way I stood taller. One of them, a trans guy named Alex, became close too, sharing stories that broadened my view of our community. But internal storms raged. I questioned if I deserved Nathaniel's patience, if the boy Dad threw out could ever be enough. Nathaniel sensed it and we talked late one night on his couch. "Love isn't about perfection," he said. "It's choosing each other through the mess." That choice anchored me. By fall, my grades soared and I landed an internship at a nonprofit writing center. Nathaniel's latest illustration series featured subtle nods to our story, figures walking side by side toward light. Life was rising, yet the past tugged like an undertow. I started volunteering more at the shelter, paying forward what Nathaniel had given me. The days blended into purpose, but I knew the real test was still ahead, the day when family would force its way back in. For now, I held on to the man beside me and the man I was becoming, one honest step at a time. The internship turned full-time after graduation, my bylines appearing in national outlets on LGBTQ youth issues. Nathaniel's career took off too, his art featured in galleries where we celebrated with quiet dinners afterward. Our life together in a small Brooklyn walk-up felt solid, filled with morning coffee rituals and evening walks where we talked about everything and nothing. But cracks appeared when a magazine assignment sent me back near Ohio for interviews. The proximity stirred old ghosts. I didn't visit home, but the distance between us grew tense when I returned quieter than usual. Nathaniel noticed. "You're carrying it alone again," he said one night over takeout. I snapped without meaning to, accusing him of not understanding the pull of blood. The argument hung heavy until he sat beside me. "I do understand. I lost my family too. But pushing me away won't fix it." We reconciled with honest talk, the kind that strengthened us. A bigger test came when an old friend from the shelter betrayed a confidence, selling a story about my past to a tabloid. The headline twisted my journey into something cheap. Nathaniel stood by me through the fallout, helping draft my response piece that reclaimed my narrative. "This is your power now," he reminded me. Sacrifice came when I turned down a lucrative job offer in California to stay near him and the community we'd built. "You're my home," I told him, and the look in his eyes made every lost opportunity worth it. Therapy helped me unpack the self-doubt Dad planted. Sessions revealed how rejection had wired me to expect abandonment. Nathaniel attended a few, not to fix but to listen. Our bond deepened through those raw moments, conversations stretching into mornings about futures we wanted together. Career highs balanced the lows. My first book deal arrived, a memoir in progress about survival and chosen family. Nathaniel illustrated the cover concept, two figures walking toward dawn. Friends gathered for the signing, Alex from the shelter toasting our growth. Yet internally I wrestled with whether success erased the boy on the porch. One winter night, snow falling outside, Nathaniel and I sat by the window. "Whatever comes next, we face it together," he said. I believed him. The relationship wasn't perfect, but it was real, built on choices and consequences we'd both owned. Society's prejudices still stung, a protest outside my publisher's office or online hate, but they fueled my writing rather than breaking me. Nathaniel's quiet strength became my compass. When Mom called unexpectedly, voice trembling with news of Dad's health scare, I hung up torn. Nathaniel didn't push. "The decision is yours, but know you're not that scared kid anymore." The years had shaped me into someone who could carry the weight without crumbling. Our life felt complete in its imperfection, love woven through every late-night talk and shared dream. The stage was set for the past to crash back, but I was ready, or so I thought, with Nathaniel's hand in mine. The book launch drew a packed house at the New York Public Library, lights bright on the stage as I read excerpts about the night I was thrown out. Nathaniel sat in the front row, pride shining in his eyes. Questions flowed after, voices from the audience sharing their own stories. Success tasted sweet after years of scraping by, yet a quiet unease settled when I spotted familiar eyes in the back. I pushed it aside, focusing on the crowd. Post-event mingling buzzed with congratulations, my publisher already talking sequel. Nathaniel and I slipped away to our favorite rooftop spot, city lights sparkling below. "You did it," he said, pulling me close. But the next morning a reporter called. "Your father was at the event. He wants to speak." My stomach dropped. Dad had been watching from afar. Mom had said in a recent call, guilt eating at him after her illness. I didn't reply. The big LGBTQ literary gala loomed weeks later, my keynote slot the highlight. Nathaniel helped me prepare, rehearsing lines about resilience and chosen family. "Whatever happens, I'm here," he promised. Rehearsals ran late, nerves fraying as I imagined Dad in the seats. Internal conflict raged. Part of me wanted the apology I'd fantasized about. Another part feared it would reopen wounds just as I'd healed. Friends like Alex warned gently, "Forgiveness isn't owed." The gala night arrived, ballroom packed with hundreds, spotlights warm on the stage. My speech flowed, voice steady as I described the porch door and the years that followed. Applause thundered. Then Q&A. A voice rose from the middle of the crowd. "Leo." It was him. Dad stood, older, shoulders slumped, microphone in hand from the usher. The room hushed. My pulse hammered. Nathaniel's hand found mine backstage as I waited. Dad's words cracked the silence. "I was wrong. I threw my son away because I was scared and ignorant. I missed years of his life, his growth, his love." Gasps rippled. Cameras flashed. He continued, voice breaking. "I'm sorry, Leo. I see now what I lost." The words hung, heavy and raw. I stepped forward, mic trembling in my grip. Emotions crashed. Anger, pity, relief all tangled. The crowd waited, breath held. Nathaniel's presence grounded me. This was the moment years had built toward, the public reckoning I'd never expected. My response would define everything next. The silence stretched as Dad's eyes met mine across the sea of faces. My throat tightened, years of hurt rising like a wave. "I heard you," I said finally, voice steady despite the storm inside. "But sorry doesn't erase the nights I slept on benches or the times I questioned if I deserved to exist." The crowd murmured, some nodding, others tearing up. Nathaniel stood beside me now, his calm a lifeline. Dad nodded, tears on his weathered cheeks. "I know. I can't take it back. I just needed you to hear it from me here, in front of everyone who sees what you've become." Media phones lit up, the moment viral before it ended. I didn't hug him. Not yet. Instead, I thanked the audience and stepped off stage with Nathaniel, the weight of the night settling differently than I expected. Back home, we talked until dawn, unpacking every feeling. "You don't owe him anything," Nathaniel said softly, "but you owe yourself peace." Over the following weeks, Dad reached out carefully, letters and calls Mom facilitated. I met him once, coffee in a neutral cafe, Nathaniel waiting outside. Words came halting, stories of his own regrets after Mom's illness opened his eyes. No instant fix. The scars remained, but conversation planted tiny seeds. My writing evolved, incorporating the gala without easy resolution. Nathaniel and I grew closer through it, our bond tested and stronger. Life continued, book tours, new projects, quiet evenings where love felt earned. Family wasn't restored fully, but boundaries formed with respect. Friends celebrated the growth, Alex toasting at a gathering. The journey taught me choices define us more than origins. Standing on our balcony one evening, city humming below, Nathaniel wrapped an arm around me. "You've come so far from that porch." I smiled. The pain softened into something I could carry with pride. The public apology had cracked the door, but healing was mine to finish. True or false? A single public apology from a father can truly heal the deep scars of disowning his gay son at 17?